Alright, today we're going to talk about a little bit about starting motors. You may ask yourself, what the hell is that? It's a funny looking starter. What is that big thing on the top of that starter? Well, back in 1938, the year of this car, and even later than that actually, in some of the trucks, way up until the 50s, some of them had foot starters like that. That's a foot starter. You actually sit in the car there, sit behind the wheel, push your foot into that lever there to engage the starter. Later they hooked up a solenoid to the starter that engaged it. So maybe we'll talk about pulling the starter for people. This is another beginner's video, maybe some tips. You can indeed pull the starter from the top. In my 1938, there's lots of other 38s like it, I'm sure. So your 38 would be probably similar. See if I can get the light just right here. Little tip, unbolt the filter housing here. Kind of move it away from the block, gives you a little bit more room. There's two starter bolts. One goes on the top here, one over here on this side. There's two. And you can get them out. It's just gotta be patient. You can do it with a basic, basically a 5/8 wrench on there. Get it down, it'll fit in between the block, work it in behind the block. You're gonna take your time, do a little bit of a turn, a little bit of a quarter turn every time. It kind of fits down behind here and fits behind the block, and you spin it into between the block and the firewall. That's the top one. Take it out first and take out the bottom one easily from the top side. Let the starter up. So why did I pull the starter out? I did not pull it out to make a video, but when I have things apart, I think now's a good time maybe to help some people out and make a video for people. When you push the starting motor, you're pushing it forward like this with your foot. You're pushing this lever. That pushes down on this button here. Then the button contacts, see, your battery cable is hooked up here. When you push this button forward like that, it touches a switch here and engages just the winding coils in the starter to crank it over. And the reason it's on a long lever like this and all this linkage is thinking, well, why don't we just have something that just pushes directly on here? Well, when you push this lever forward with your foot like that, something's happening in here. This is the starter nose cone. We flip that up. That's the gear that engages your starting. There's a Bendix in behind here. It's a spring-loaded one-way gear. I can turn it this direction. I cannot turn it back the other way. The whole starter spins. So what happens is you push this lever forward, back, and at the same time, I'm trying to do this and hold the camera at the same time here. Watch that come out. See how it comes forward? That gear comes forward. It engages the ring gear on your starter, or sorry, the ring gear on the back of your flywheel. And then the amperage, voltage, electricity going through the starter spins the starter. It spins it and it cranks the motor over. There's a ton of power through here. High amp draw. That cranks over your motor, your engine. And what happens once your engine starts, remember, this can turn freely in one direction. Now, if I'm the flywheel, I'm turning in this direction, it's turning faster and it'll just override and spin in that direction. Then so when the starter's going and the engine's spinning, this is spinning, you let your foot off, it jumps back into position away from the ring gear. Does that make sense? Forward, there it is, it's starting now. I'm cranking on the engine, take my foot off, it goes back. So a couple of key points on just basic linkage and workings of the starter. I bought this car, it didn't have all these parts, there were some things missing. This is important. Right in here there's a spring. See that spring there? That's brand new, I had to buy it, it was missing. And that helps with the, as soon as you take your foot off the starter, it springs back into position. So when you, this is difficult, like I said, one hand here. When I push the starter forward, as soon as I let it go, it snaps back. And that spring is why. So you want to make sure that spring is in place. You can get them for $5 on eBay if you need one or something. You need proper hardware here and here to hold the foot starting pedal in place. This is just a fulcrum point here. It's an anchor for the end of the pin, but like I said, it doesn't really activate anything over here. It's just holding things in place, and that's your return. But you need the bolts here. I'm recommending a Stover nut maybe. That's a nut that's slightly oval. You want these locked in place. Or a nylock. I've got a nylock here, and I've got an oval nut on this end. So once you tighten those down, you don't want those backing out. They fall down, they disconnect, come apart, and you got a problem. This switch here, inside of here, there's copper contacts, or brass, whatever it is. I think it's copper. Here it is, your battery post hooking up there, cable. If you take that off, you can clean it all up. You need good continuity here. And you'll see how the starter switch here pushes down and how it engages. You want to make sure that's good and clean. It's important. So my symptoms were, I was pushing the starter lever with my foot, of course, and it wasn't disengaging well. It wasn't going back easily. And I thought, maybe I got a bent rod. Maybe this linkage is loose. I took it apart, took it out of the car, still didn't want to return easily. So I took out these 2 through bolts here. That releases the nose cone. It comes off this way. And a little piece fell out. I don't know where it came from. Small, tiny piece right there. See if you can get it in the light. You can see it. I don't know. It looks like it's been in there for some time. It's not a fresh break. It's been rubbing around in there for a little while. And it had lodged itself into the linkage inside in here. There's a yoke that fits around that bendix that pushes it forward. It's hooked to this lever. And it was binding up. It worked its way down in there. You know, I had the starter rebuilt about a year ago. It's never been nice and free like it is now. Everything moves freely now. I think, I don't know how that's part of the starter anywhere. I don't recognize it. I don't think it's part of I don't think it's my starter coming apart, but is it possible that when the guy rebuilt my starter, somehow that fell in there? Anyways, it worked its way down and bound up my linkage. Took the nose cone off, pulled it out, everything is nice and free now, moves very freely. So there's kind of your quick tip on starter on 1938, how it works, what it does. Now I'm going to put it back together. I can probably get it back in 15 minutes. It's not a bad job. So there you go. Maybe you learned something today. Have a good one.